What is going on, everybody? It is Wednesday night, which means it's time for Inside the Browns Beat here on the OBR streaming network. I'm your host, Michael Keefe, and you'll notice it's just me on the screen, and that's not what you're used to. And I promise you this is not going to last long because, frankly, I don't like looking at just myself on the screen as much as you don't like it. You will notice that my co-host, the amazing, the legendary Fred Greetham, is not joining tonight. He is on a fantastic family vacation, so he gets a week off, and we're going to let it happen. But I told him never again. So he will be back next week. But I have got a great slate for you here on Inside the Browns Beat. And I'm glad you've tuned in. I'm glad you're here. And make sure you jump in the comments and join as well, as I've got two great special guests here tonight that are going to be joining me to talk about the Cleveland Browns. First, before we get to that, though, please get over to the OBR.com. The oldest and largest independent Browns coverage site in all of Cleveland is the OBR. So make sure you get to the OBR.com, hit subscribe. Memberships, they're affordable and they're worth it because the Browns coverage is awesome from all of my colleagues with the OBR. So make sure you get over there. And if you're watching us on YouTube, Twitch, wherever you're catching it tonight, make sure you hit subscribe. Make sure you hit like and tell your friends. If they like the Browns, then they're going to like Inside the Browns Beat. So again, big show tonight. Cleveland Browns. We get to have a victory show. I'm so sad Fred's not here, by the way, because I've never gotten to do a victory show with Fred, and we get to do a victory show tonight because the Cleveland Browns came away with a humongous win this last weekend, and I've got two great guests that are going to talk about it with me a little bit later in the show. A guy that has covered the Cleveland Browns almost as long as Fred has, about the same amount of time, from the News Herald and the Morning Journal. Jeff Schudel joins to talk about the Cleveland Browns, their win, and the upcoming game against Detroit. But to kick things off, we've got somebody that Fred's gotten to know a little bit covering the Browns and obviously jumping on the show Off the Leash, which if you haven't checked that out, it is a blast. So make sure you're checking out Off the Leash from WOIO. I'm going to bring her in right now. It's Leah Doherty. Leah, welcome Inside the Browns Beat.
Thank you so much for having me. Excited to be a part of it. I'm excited, like you mentioned, we have a win to talk about. We have some positivity to talk about surrounding the Cleveland Browns. That's not often the case. So the rare chance we get to do it, we're excited to do it.
Leah, we're taking advantage of this tonight. We
Yes.
are taking advantage of rare opportunities here, okay? And all Clevelanders will appreciate this.
They will, yes.
Leah, to start things off, one of my favorite moments of the show that we do every week is this moment of pride that my colleague Fred has, because he's very proud of this show. And one day I'll tell a story about how he beams about this show. But this moment of pride that Fred has at the beginning of all of our interviews with our special guests, that he loves to give you guys the opportunity to just introduce yourself to everybody. And again, you're on TV a lot of who we have on the beat writers and the people who just really come on to talk about the Browns. But we give you a chance to talk about yourself for a minute. So Fred loves to do this, and I'm going to keep it going. Leah, as a member of WOIO and Off the Leash and somebody that covers Cleveland sports, tell us a little bit about your journey and how you got to covering Cleveland sports.
Yeah, I would love to. So I'm originally from Austin, Texas. That's where I was born and raised. I went to school at Texas Tech University and then, stuck around, was there for a couple of Mahomes years, which was a lot of fun. And then started working in local news at a station that I'd interned for there. And so I started off as our weekend anchor and evening news reporter just until I could get my foot in the door in sports. And so I did that for about 2 years in Lubbock. Then I finally got my foot in the door, got to be a weekend sports anchor, did that for about a year. And then, which is why I'm extra excited to get to talk about the Packers game, I actually spent 2 years in Madison, Wisconsin after that. So was there for 2 years at the NBC station in Madison, which was so much fun. I actually just had a friend text me today and be like, what is this Curter Burger thing that Culver's is talking about? They have a whole burger with like a cheese curd patty. I was like, yeah, have you not heard about this? Because like it shut down our news station when it happened. Like it was all out coverage. We were waiting in line to go get one. I ate one live on air for our Friday football show. It was a good time. Spent 2 years at our sister station there in Madison and then got the opportunity to come here. So I'm now headed into my third season covering the Browns. My husband, Matt, actually played baseball at Akron back in the day. He was familiar with this area. He's from Rochester, New York, so not too far. And so I had never been to Cleveland before I signed my contract and up and moved here. And I asked my husband, I said, am I going to like it there? And he said, oh, you're going to love it. Cleveland's awesome. And for you being a sports reporter, you're extra going to love it because win or lose, like these fans are ride and die and just the culture around Cleveland sports, which was a little similar to Green Bay, right? I mean, those fans are ride and die no matter what for their team. And it's just cool. It has kind of like has a small market feel, right? And so I was like, all right, if you say I'm going to like Cleveland, let's do it. Let's pack up our stuff and the dog and let's move to Cleveland. And we've loved it. It's been great so far.
Shout out. We're quickly becoming fans of Matt. We are now fans of Matt.
We love that.
Yes, Matt.
That's great.
you talk big things about Cleveland, Matt. We love this about Matt. Also, weirdly, we've done the show. Fred and I started the show just kind of the beginning of the preseason. Now, second Rochester, New York reference when we had Spencer German on. Spencer spent a bunch of time in Rochester, New York.
He does. Yep. We've shared
Rochester keeps coming up.
We've shared about garbage plates, which is like what Rochester is known for. First time I visited Matt's family, I had a stomach bug, so I did not eat a garbage plate, but I have since had them, and they are good. I can vouch for it.
I will live and die by the fact that Genesee Cream Ale is my favorite cheap beer ever, and the Genesee Brewery is right there in downtown Rochester. And when you walk out the brewery, you are face to face with the weirdest waterfall I've ever seen in my whole life. And Rochester's a weird, fun place.
Yes.
And so I like that it keeps coming up.
Yes.
Also, I do have to throw this out real quick. I don't know if you see it behind me, but you are a Texas Tech person.
Yes.
I went to Texas A&M. So
are you from Texas?
Nope, I'm from Cleveland.
Oh.
I brought a little northernness down to Texas.
Okay.
And go ahead.
We have a statue, I don't know if you know, on campus, our like masked rider and the horse, and the back end of the horse faces the exact degree and direction of College Station. As it should,
except for tell them to knock it off over there. No, I was there. You were there during Mahomes years, which is a blast. I was at A&M during miserable years. And I remember, it was a little bit before your time, Leah. I remember watching players like Michael Crabtree and, oh God, who was the quarterback? I don't remember the quarterback, but he threw for like 1 billion yards. And they torched us every time we played him. And it was a real bummer.
You must have had a great time with the whole Johnny Manziel crossover for you then.
Leah, I had a good time for a minute. I had a good time. I liked him in college. That was fun.
Of course.
I don't want to talk about it anymore. I don't want to talk about that anymore. Because now he said, yes, Graham Herald. Thank you to, I guess, us. Thank you to us. Yeah. Graham Herald. That's who it was. Yep. Yeah, now he's talking bad stuff about Cleveland. And as much as I love my Aggies, we don't talk bad about Cleveland.
I know. And honestly, I have no hatred for Texas A&M. It's just Texas. And I'm from Austin. And I'm just not a Longhorn, not a Longhorn fan. So A&M, I'm okay with. I didn't drink the Kool-Aid. I didn't go there, but I have no problem with the Aggies. I got no problem.
I went in blind. I had no idea about the Kool-Aid, and then I found out real fast when I got there.
Yeah.
All right, so Leah, thank you for sharing a little bit of your story. The Culver's story was great. You would be shocked to find out, as somebody that lived in Madison, that Culver's has only been here for a very small amount of time in the Cleveland area. So those of us that have lived here forever lived for a long time without Culver's, and that was sad.
That's
but it was cool when they came here.
Yeah.
Let's talk about this Cleveland Browns team. Now 1-2 on the season after a victory that nobody saw coming, a victory that you could say I picked it. I wasn't confident in that. I was just being a homer. So I'm not going to take any pride in that. Really, nobody actually picked the Browns after the way they've started the season to come out and beat the Green Bay Packers, but very reminiscent of the team from 2 years ago. The Cleveland Browns came out and played a team that was considered to be pretty much the best team in football at the time that they played, and they muddied the game, and it slowed down, and the defense brought everything to a crashing halt. And somehow, some way at the end of the game, the Cleveland Browns found a way to win. Leah, just talk about covering the team, talk about, watching that game and watching how this season has started and what you kind of think that win means for the Browns for this season.
You mentioned 23, and I think back to that season and also last season. The Browns, I feel like, have the capacity to win or lose just about any game. Like, you just don't know. And so you had a feeling that maybe one of these games, they have a tough start to their schedule, but you figured maybe at least one of these games is going to go in their direction. And so you thought maybe there's a chance. Is it going to be Packers? Is it going to be Lions? We thought maybe one of them were going to swing their way. But, I mean, the energy in that stadium when they were only down 10-0 felt like they were down 30-0. You're like, oh, there's no energy here at all. I'm already thinking in my head just as a reporter, because I had to turn 2 different stories on the game. I was like, all right, well, what are my angles going to be? And I'm going to go into locker room, and God, no one's going to want to talk, and it's going to be really disappointing in there. And all right, moving forward, what does my coverage look like for the next week? We're 0-3, and you're thinking about it. And I'm leaving the press box, and as I'm leaving, it's Grant Delpit's interception. And then you just start to see the tide turn, and then I'm down there standing outside of the locker room, just feet away from Andrew Berry as they're watching Andre Schmidt's game winner. And it was like, did that just happen? Like, did he just nail that? But it was like, oh, of course he did. Look at the way everything has turned. I mean, they were at one point, what was it, 1st and goal at the 5, and they had to settle for a field goal. They blew that. And you're like, oh, they're going to blow another opportunity. And then the defense finally gets a takeaway. Quinshon Judkins gets his first score. And then Andre Schmidt, which is such a cool story compared to what happened to him week 1. Fans, right, are vicious when it especially comes to a kicker, right? There's no mercy. Dustin Hopkins was beloved last year. Not so much. Let's get him out. And he's can't say enough great things about the type of person that he is. And so I was bummed to see him go. And so I was even a little skeptical about Andre Schmidt after week 1. He's a guy that obviously this is his first NFL season. That was his first NFL game. I think he led, was it like the XFL in like field goals or something last year? He's a kid out of Syracuse. But he lost his mom over the summer for a brain aneurysm. And to go in and to beat out Dustin Hopkins and then just swing the total other way after week 1 and have the game winner like he did. And his own girlfriend wasn't even there. He was showing me his phone. His phone was just blowing up with texts and calls. And I was like, have you been able to talk to anyone? Because, of course, he was just getting swarmed with media. And he was like, no, the only person I had a second to like fire off a text to was my girlfriend. She's not even here. She lives in New York. She's going to be at the Lions game. But he was like, that was our plan. It's my birthday next week. So she's going to come in and do that. But what a cool, like, weird Browns way to win a game, to where they just kind of like fell into it. There was no offensive momentum. And like, that's the big concern heading into next week is like, great, they pulled out this one, but like the offense still didn't look productive. But yeah, that was a fun one for sure. Did not expect that.
You know, a lot of the fun of doing this show and talking to all of you and the reporters and the people that really cover the Browns on a daily basis is such good storytellers. And this Andre Schmidt story, you know, the kick happened, and I think it started with the Kevin Stefanski press conference afterwards, or maybe even the Myles Garrett interview afterwards, where they were talking about this kid's been through so much. And I was sitting there going, what are they talking about? Right? Because the whole situation with his mom was really just a kind of a private thing. And it didn't seem like that was a thing that had really been ever reported or talked about. And again, for a lot of reasons, probably, but what an incredible story. And so I think a lot of us Clevelanders were sitting there saying, wait a minute, what stuff? What are the trials and tribulations of this kid after week 1? And then when he came out and did his interview and he talked about his mom and passing away in July, and it's only been a couple months, and the story, I mean, for you as a reporter, the story just writes itself. I mean, an insane story.
Yeah, and I think too, I would imagine one of the hardest parts of being a kicker has to be the mental aspect of it all. And so that's what I had asked him in the locker room. It's got to be so hard. I just know myself. I'm like, if I got like one negative comment, I'd be like, all right, I'm done for it. Like, so to go from week 1, and how do you ride that roller coaster? Because not only what you saw happen in week 1 and how frustrating that is, but now you can't get too high based on what just happened, right? You have to go out there and kick again next week. And the fact that you're not a wide receiver, or you just missed one tackle, but you'll get another play. You dropped a ball, you'll get another play. Like, this is it. It all just builds up to one moment. Are you going to deliver, or are you not going to deliver? And so I asked him about what is it like to ride that wave and not get too high or too low. And he pointed to Corey Bajorquez that was standing next to him. He's like, this guy has been huge in helping me with that and welcoming me in. And just, he seems like obviously a guy from the brief time that we've known Andre that has a good head on his shoulders. And I think kickers are kind of wired to be that way. You can't be too high or too low, because one week the fan base hates you and wants you gone, and then couple weeks later, they're celebrating your praises, right? And so, yeah, I think we were all a little hard on him week 1, and then you had no idea what he had been going through, like you mentioned.
Right. Yeah, what a story, and what a moment for that kid. And listen, we've seen young kids come in and have moments at kicker before, and things haven't panned out. But you certainly, after learning everything about this kid, and then after seeing the ice water in his veins with a 55-yarder at the end of the game, all you can do is hope that this kid succeeds for a lot of different reasons.
Yeah.
Leah, let's just look at a couple of things from this game, maybe some positives and negatives. Let's start on the offensive side of the ball. We talked about the offense still looks disjointed. It's still the passing game just cannot get itself going. Joe, we can talk about this in a minute. Maybe looks like he hasn't quite seen the field the way that he, I think, expects to see the field. But if we start with positives, for the first time in a couple of years, there's a semblance of a run game with the Cleveland Browns. Quinshon Judkins has been the real deal in his first couple of games. And, I think a lot has been made about how the Browns have been able to stop opposing running backs. Well, that was the Packers. Packers had allowed no success by running backs on the ground for the first 2 weeks. And Quinshon Judkins went out there and performed the best out of anybody they've played so far. And he was a humongous part of them at least getting down the field to get some scores. Just talk about Quinshon Judkins, the way that they are now opening up some holes for him, and maybe a little bit about the depth too, because I also think, Lee, if I'm going to throw something out there too, I think a lot of people want to see more of Dylan Sampson as much as possible. We didn't really see that in this Green Bay game. We saw a lot of Jerome Ford off the bench in that backup role. So I guess start with the good and then kind of talk about the way you see this room falling.
Yeah, we had said early on, if the Browns are going to have success, they're going to have to find it on the run game, right? And they're going to have to find it with Quinshon Judkins. Obviously, with everything that was going on with him off the field, that was a little bit delayed, but now you're slowly starting to see him ramp up and take on more of a workload. And because of that, we saw Dylan Sampson early on before we saw Quinshon Judkins, and you were like, man, all right, Dylan Sampson, like this kid runs with a little bit of extra juice. And then you see Quinshon Judkins coming and you were like, oh, no, this kid runs different. This kid just has like a fire in him. And the way he was just like plowing through guys and push through. And this is his second NFL game. I mean, it was just crazy. And so, yeah, Browns have a lot to be excited about with this kid, and it's still early on and he's still getting caught up to speed. And so I think you're really, really excited what you have with him. Now you have a couple O-line injuries you're looking at, right? So how does this going to pan out in terms of Lions and Dwan Jones now being out for the rest of the season? But that was really exciting, as you at least are seeing some consistency in the run game, and your next guy that now can take over that role that Nick Chubb had. It was interesting. Mark Schwab had brought up a conversation of if we see another good game out of Quinshon Judkins, are Browns fans forgetting about Nick Chubb, or are they not going to be upset about Nick Chubb no longer being a Brown? And I said, I haven't even really seen that. If anything, I've seen more people be like, let's go to Jerome Ford less, and we need to stick with Quinshon and Dylan Sampson more. But yeah, I mean, it's just been all good things with him and getting him ramped up. And then you talk about some of the negatives with the pass game. I think, well, if we want to stick to more positives, which I will, I think the young guys as a whole, this draft class, I know the Browns don't traditionally draft the best. This young draft class has looked great. And I think it was Andrew Siciliano that put out, through 3 games, 50% of the Browns yards from scrimmage are coming from rookies. Guys like Herald Fannin, who's great. Obviously, Dylan Sampson, Quinshon Judkins that we've talked to. I'm excited to see what they can unlock out of Isaiah Bond, hopefully. And you talk about Flacco maybe not seeing the field as well as he used to. I mean, there were a couple missed moments when it came to Isaiah Bond. One time he was wide open and didn't hit him. So I think it's exciting to see what they have with these young guys, because right now you don't have your number one guy in terms of Jerry Jeudy. I didn't feel like you had your guy before Quinshon Judkins really got going. I didn't feel like you had your guy to where on third down, you could just get it in someone's vicinity and they're going to get you that first down. I didn't feel like Jerry Jeudy has come up in clutch scenarios. Maybe David Njoku, but Harold Fannin and Quinshon Judkins have been really exciting.
Yeah, 100%. I could watch Harold Fannin all day, every day, and he and Njoku out there are spectacular. When you hear and you talk to players and you conduct your interviews and all that, obviously Joe Flacco a big focus now. And I know a lot of fans want to run just directly headfirst into the brick wall that is the quarterback conversation. But the reality is you're still in a very difficult part of the schedule. You just won a game, and Joe Flacco is not playing well. But if anybody knows how to adjust, it's going to be a guy like Joe Flacco. So he does need to make adjustments. But what do we, like, in your opinion, what are you seeing out of the passing game from Joe Flacco? It seems like he's a little antsy in the pocket. And what are you hearing him say when he's talking about the way he's playing that I think that Browns fans should kind of grasp onto and say, all right, Joe can get it together?
I think it needs to be the connection between Flacco and Jerry Jeudy. Like, I think that has to be established. We haven't seen that be consistent at all. I mean, I'm trying to pull up the stats over here. Jerry Jeudy had one catch for 17 yards against the Packers. That was it. So they need to get on the same page. And you talk about the quarterback conversation because, I mean, after week 1, people were already asking Kevin Stefanski, are you going to make a change at quarterback? And I think it boils down to who's going to give you the best chance to win. And right now, I still do feel like that is Joe Flacco. You mentioned a tough part of the schedule that you're in. Now, if we're getting 5, 6, 7 games into this thing and it hasn't been cleaned up, I'm not going to be surprised knowing Cleveland and the quarterback carousel. Like I've said early on, is that I'm not going to be surprised if we see Schudel this season. I'm not going to be surprised if we see Deshaun Watson pop out there at some point.
You knock it off, Leah. You knock that off.
We saw in 23 when Flacco came off the couch, they had 5 different quarterbacks they played that year. And so nothing surprises me anymore, which is funny. The girl that had the job before me, Bailey Burmaster, she's now a sports director in Atlanta. And I was talking to her about this and she goes, you've been in Cleveland too long, Leah. If you're saying these things, you sound crazy. If you're saying we're going to see Deshaun and Schudel, she was like, stop, Leah. But I think that's the key is if he can get a connection going with Jeudy, and we can see some production out of that duo, I think that's the key to this whole thing.
Look at Leah, you're getting everybody riled up.
I'm sorry.
Don't you dare.
They're never going to want me back again.
No, you said the W word. You did it. Look at people are getting upset. No, we will not ban you from the show, but we gotta be careful just throwing that out there like that. You got to at least give a little warning, a little disclaimer.
Look, we just know that anything could happen in Cleveland any given season, right? I'm just trying to prepare everyone for all scenarios.
Now I feel like you're manifesting, and I don't like it. P.S. You brought up a friend. Bailey Burmaster was. I have 2 shows on Wednesday, so hey, shout out to 9 o'clock Garage Beers. Make sure you tune in to everybody watching this. But Bailey was a good friend of ours on Garage Beers, so next time you talk to her, tell her we said hi. On the other side of the ball, the defense is almost surprisingly, like almost shockingly good. And nobody thought they weren't going to be good. I mean, I think there were questions. There was the 2023 unit that was so good and almost generationally so. And then the 2024 unit, I think they catch a hard time because of what they were asked to do. Because the reality of 2024 was that defense was pretty darn good, but they were also out on the field all the time for all the games. And offensively, the Browns were as inept as they have looked to start this year. And so it was very hard to ask the defense to really step up more than what they could. This performance against the Packers, a team that was beating up, they destroyed the Lions in week 1. They beat up the Commanders in week 2. Offensively, they were stretching the field. They were getting everything they wanted, short, long. Josh Jacobs was running all over people and just kind of looked like a juggernaut offensively. And the defense went in and made Jordan Love look miserable with the pressure. And then the guys in the middle of the field really seemed to step up. So defensively, this game, how impressed were you by the Cleveland Browns here?
So impressed where I was going to be so frustrated if the Browns offense went out there and lost this game after the defense had just handed them such a spectacular performance. It was going to be so beyond frustrating if they couldn't pull it out and win this game, because of how dominant and stifling their defense was. When you literally have guys from the Packers O linemen screaming, "Run, Jordan, run away!" Like they had no answer. And what is it? Mina Kimes that pointed out the screenshot of the conga line of O linemen lined up trying to stop Myles Garrett, and that play ended in a sack anyways. And we talked about the young guys on the offense, young guys on the defense. Carson Schwessinger looked amazing. You're seeing more development out of Mason Graham. He looked great. Carson Schwessinger, I think enough people are talking about it, but more people should, about the fact he's wearing the green dot, the leadership role that he's stepped up in with JOK gone, Jordan Hicks retiring. Like, this kid just stepped in and makes it look effortlessly. And when you talk to him, like, this is just a football guy that just loves to talk ball. Like, anyone you talk to and you ask them about Carson Schwessinger, they're like, this kid is obsessed with football. Like, he just seems like a guy that's like, I just want to put on a helmet and go hit someone, and that's all I care about. And that's how it looks on the field when he's out there and played. I think his sack on Love was like a loss of 11 yards or something. He just looked like he was shot out of a cannon. Yeah.
Yes.
It was insane. So, yeah, that's a guy that's just like, I want to go hit someone. Just let me loose. And, like, I'm just going to go. They were all just flying around out there. There was an injury update on Denzel Ward today. And so he didn't practice. I believe it was shoulder and toe. And so Kevin Stefanski was asked about him and said he's day-to-day. So that's a recent development that we're monitoring. But golly, that's what was frustrating in the Ravens loss too. That defense early on looked good, but the longer you're out there, you're going to get worn down. That's just naturally what's going to happen. And so I was so glad they were able to get a win for how great of a defensive performance they put out.
Yeah, unbelievable. Leah, just a couple quick questions before we let you out of here. As you look at you, you're at work, working, hanging out with us. It's great.
Getting ready to anchor. Got guards ball going on too.
Yes. We do have a question from the comments. Our buddy Serge wants to know if you have any insight in what the nickname for Carson Schwessinger is in the locker room. And the follow-up is that Serge doesn't know what to chant when he makes big plays, and it looks like he makes a lot of them. So we got to know. Is there a nickname? Does he have a nickname that you've heard?
Not that I've heard. I feel like on the outside, people said, not in the locker room, but like Sunshine because of the long hair that he's got, you know? But Jim Schwartz early on, I think right after they drafted him, was like, he's going to have to cut that. I don't like it. Looks like he's straight out of California, which he is. But now I feel like I don't know. What do people say? Schwess? But other than that, there's got to be one. I'll ask around, but I feel like I haven't heard anything.
All right. Pay attention to Leah. Pay attention to her reports because we're going to need to hear that. We're going to need to know. And Jim Schwartz is going to have to tone it down because that hair can look however it wants if this kid's playing.
I'm sure he's fine now, you know? But early on, he's like, it's got to go.
So, Leah, I just want to get your thoughts real quick. Two things here. Wednesday tends to be a pretty big news day for the Browns. That's when a lot of things drop. You just brought up one thing, obviously injury news to Denzel Ward. We'll see how that goes. You never know whether day-to-day means you're going to see him on Sunday or you're not going to see him for 4 weeks. That's what day-to-day tends to mean with the Browns. Obviously, DeJuan Jones and his injury out for the season. They signed the Ohio State guy that I can't remember his name now off the top of my head, but off the practice squad for the Patriots. But any other big things that got reported today or that you heard from the team today that stood out to you?
Yeah, pulling it up just to make sure I get it right. David Njoku limited with a knee injury, and then Cedric Tillman was limited, and he was listed for hand and hip. And then the other two guys that didn't practice, Mike Hall Jr. with his knee injury, obviously, and then Shelby Harris didn't practice with a hamstring injury. And then you have a couple other guys. I mean, Joel Bitonio, it was rest. Myles Garrett, it was rest. Joel Bitonio, which we didn't know how bad it was, his back injury, obviously they were downplaying it, but Kevin Stefanski, I think when he was doing the game balls and stuff after the game, you saw it on the video, he was like, this guy couldn't even like walk yesterday. And he's just a psycho that's like, I just want to get out there and play. And so they said it wasn't injury related for his back, that he just sat out today for rest. But that's one of those, Joel Bitonio doesn't get talked about enough either because there's, never enough love for O linemen. But yeah, that's the latest that I've heard.
That injury report is very much a head, shoulders, knees, and toes situation out of all of those.
Day-to-day, and if you ask Kevin Stefanski about any of them, day-to-day.
Yep. Shelby Harris out because his hand is sore. That's fine. That's fine. Has a sore hand.
No, that was hamstring.
Oh, I know. I'm just saying his hand may also be sore because a football hit it really hard. Last question. Just looking forward. I know we talked a lot about the Packers game, but oh boy, do they have a test. And if you watch the Monday night game, the Ravens went to the Lions went to Baltimore and did not make Baltimore look very good. Lions offensively were able to kind of get whatever they wanted. Defensively, they had Lamar everywhere. And that's the test for the Cleveland Browns against the Detroit Lions. For me, Leah, I'll give you my little key, and then I'll let you give a key and your thoughts of that game real quick before we let you go. But for me, the key seems in this game to be you have to pressure Jared Goff. Jared Goff is one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL when pressured, and he's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL when he has a clean pocket. And so it has to be consistent, a consistent pass rush to keep that offense off balance for the Detroit Lions. And then somehow offensively, you have to keep Joe Flacco upright, and it's not going to be easy because that's a pretty good defensive line and pass rush for the Detroit Lions. Leah, what are your thoughts on the game this weekend?
Yeah, going off of you, I would say most importantly, D-line is going to need the win their matchups and apply that pressure, and we're going to need another defensive performance like we saw against the Packers. We don't know how serious any of these injuries are with Denzel Ward and some of those guys, and I know they've already looked a little thin in the secondary with some of the injuries they've already had. But yeah, D-line is going to need to be winning those matchups, and then offensively, like we just have to get Jerry Jeudy going, or someone else, whether it's Isaiah Bond or we need some wide receiver. Like, that's just to make a good football team. We need your number one wide receiver, and I don't feel like we've seen that so far. And so you're going to continue to see consistency with Quinshon Judkins. Hopefully you keep getting guys like Harold Fannin more involved, like you had mentioned. Let's see more out of Dylan Sampson. But yeah, you got to get Flacco has to get that connection going to where he can throw some of those deep balls. So that they're going to have to do that. You can't win a game if you don't put up points, unless we just send Andre Schmidt out there time and time again, which, maybe could happen too.
That's right. It could. Hey, Leah Doherty, this has been awesome. Go follow Leah on the X Twitter thing, at Leah Doherty TV, from WOIO, Off the Leash. Great stuff you do. We know you have Fred on there a good bit, and I know he wishes he could be here, but what a time it was talking Browns with you. Have fun covering sports tonight. Hopefully you're talking about another Guardians win, and we look forward to your coverage of the Browns all season long. Really appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me. I had a great time. Appreciate it.
All right, Leah, we'll talk to you later. Leah Doherty, big shout out to her for joining us. Again, WOIO, Off the Leash, and all kinds of great coverage. So make sure, again, you go follow Leah, and a big, big thank you from us to her for stepping in, especially when Fred couldn't be here. That was a great way for us to talk a little bit about the Browns and a Browns victory. Again, I'm going to throw this out there, obr.com. Get over there and subscribe. And I'm going to do selfish promotion one more time. Garage Beers, 9:00 tonight. We're talking Guardians with the former general manager of the New York Mets, current MLB Network analyst, Steve Phillips. He's going to join us to talk about this ridiculous surge the Guardians are making, the first place Guardians. So make sure you guys tune in there. Now it's time to get into the second half of our show, and I've got another special guest, and this was so much fun. Fred was very excited about this too, because this is a guy that Fred has been covering the Cleveland Browns with for more than 40 years. And they started about the same time, and they have a lot of great stories together, and you're going to hear some of them. But I got to sit down and have a conversation. This one isn't live, but I got to have a conversation with, from the News Herald and the Morning Journal, Jeff Schudel. And you don't want to miss this one because Jeff says a lot of great things in this interview. So hang out here. I'm going to play the interview, and then I'll be back at the end of the show to wrap things up. So here's my interview with Jeff Schudel. All right, very excited to be joined by our second special guest of the episode with my buddy Fred Greetham out on vacation. How dare he leave in the middle of Brown season and go on vacation? But we're excited to be talking with somebody who has been covering the Browns for just about as long as Fred Greetham has. Two guys that go way, way back. And I know Fred was bummed that he is missing this episode, but he told me that I was in good hands. From the News Herald, from the Morning Journal, Jeff Schudel. Jeff, welcome on Inside the Browns Beat.
Hey, thanks for having me, Mike. As a matter of fact, Fred and I started together with the Browns in 1981. So, yeah, we go back a long, long way.
I know. I went to Fred and I said, because part of this show, part of the fun of this show is, yes, we are going to talk about the Browns, but with so many of you guys, you excellent beat writers and reporters out there, we really only hear you when you're just giving straight up facts about the Browns. And we like to get to know people a little bit more. And Fred, that was immediately, he said, Fred started when I started, and asked him all kinds of stories about way back when, like he said you two were covering practice together when the TV was on and you saw Art Modell signing paperwork to move the team to Baltimore. What was it like in that room when you saw that happening?
I hate to use surreal is really the right thing. And I remember we were talking to him on the Saturday before he announced it. And right then I had a real sick feeling in the pit of my stomach because I knew right then there was no going back, that we were in the final days of the Browns being in Cleveland. And it's still really hard. It's really hard to believe, Mike, that it's been 30 years. That's
unreal.
Really hard to imagine it's been that long.
I know. I try to explain it to people. For people that are about my age, I'm 40. And so my football team was taken away from me when I was 10 years old. That is it was a crazy thing to experience as a kid. But it also explains when people are like, why do you still put up with this Browns team? I'm like, because I remember what that was like as a kid. So as much as I hate them sometimes, it's still better to have them here than not. I can only imagine what it was like to cover them.
Oh, for sure. And you think about it, there's so many people that don't even really know that there was a former Browns team. Like when Jarvis Landry played here and the Browns were playing the Ravens, he didn't know that the Ravens were the Browns. And I mean, here's a player who didn't realize it. So you can imagine that kids who are in high school today, unless their parents told them, they have no idea.
Jeff, you know what? I think it's a fascinating topic for just one more question here. But when you look back on that time, you're a guy that's covered Cleveland sports since before you started covering the Browns. I believe on your website on the News Herald, it says 1972 is when you really started covering sports in Cleveland.
Right.
But for the people that are probably a little bit younger than me that don't really remember that first era, explain what the city of Cleveland was like. Now, granted, we had the glorious upcoming of the Cleveland Indians at the time that just hit right at the right time. But explain what it was like in the city of Cleveland when the Browns were gone for those few years.
There was like, what do you do? You know, I mean, Browns, even though a football season back then was 16 games, it would still consumed everybody who cared, right? Because you have the season, and then you have the draft, and then you're already getting ready for the next year. So for those 3 seasons to not have football, but the pursuit of a football team and what the fans did, Mike, to get the Cleveland to have another NFL team, they were relentless in their protest to the NFL office. And I covered all that machinery while they were gone. And when you think about this, that Art Modell on November 6th, 1995 said, I'm taking this team to Baltimore. And then in February of the following year, so just 4 months later, the NFL promised that Cleveland would have football in 1999. At that time, we didn't know if it would be an expansion team or a relocated team. But that's how motivated the fans were to get football back here to Cleveland.
And then we got an expansion team that makes other expansion teams embarrassed to have to share that name with them. Jeff, when I looked through your bio myself, and lots of career highlights from a long time covering sports, and you mentioned Super Bowls, and I love that you bring up the Calder Cup for the Monsters because that was awesome. But you're going to cover the Guardians tonight. I promise we're going to talk about the Browns, but you're going to cover the Guardians tonight. If the Guardians come back and they win this division, which they are in position to do after it looked like they were dead about a month ago, where does that rank on your highlights of teams that you've covered?
It's got to be up there in the top 5, maybe better than that, because they're not just mowing down people. And I tell people this, and they don't want to believe it, but there is no dominant team in the American League. And the hottest team, once the playoffs begin, if you have pitching, you could beat anybody, right? And they they had that 10-game losing streak from the end of June to July 6th. And then they lost 9 out of 10 from August 15th to the 25th. I think things started turning around August 26th. And since then, the Guardians, they're last in the majors in batting average. But they are first in the American League in batting average with runners in scoring position. So when you get timely hitting and the pitching that has been so incredible, it's a recipe that you could go further than. And the Washington Nationals a few years ago, I think it was 2019, won the World Series as a wild card team. So you get hot at the right time, and you can surprise a lot of people.
Yeah, and again, as things sit right now, the Guardians are in a wild card spot. So again, they just have to finish this week strong, and they'll be in the playoffs, which is just wild to think about as of a couple weeks or about a month ago. Jeff, just when we talk about your highlights and we talk about Cavs championships and Calder Cup and all that, we already talked about a low life in Modell, and I don't know that it's going to get more of a low light than that, but you got any other special low light stories from your time covering Cleveland sports?
Well, I think you would have to put the drive and the fumble there. I mean, to have the Browns go that far and to lose on that drive on a field goal that was still wide left, no matter how many times the NFL tries to say it wasn't wide left. That was hard to take. And then I always
wide left.
I always try to tell Mike that they should not call that the fumble. They should call it the strip. Give Jeremiah Castillo credit for stripping the ball rather than blame Ernest Biner for fumbling it. But the second half of that game in Denver, Bernie Kosar put on a show that will never be duplicated. He just took over that game. And, of course, the Browns ended up losing. But the show that he put on was something I'll never forget.
It's a shame. It's such a shame that gets lost in the history of the fumble and, the names that are given to those games because, yes, Bernie Kosar was awesome in that game. So let's catch up, Jeff, on the current Cleveland Browns. And here's where we're at, Jeff. They've lost a game they should have won that first week against the Cincinnati Bengals, leaving 4 points on the board with missed kicks and such. They had a very 2024 style loss to the Baltimore Ravens last week, where defensively they were really good to start the game, and offensively they just never got anything going against the Ravens defense. And eventually, after turnovers and after bad field position and bad special teams, there was really nothing the defense could do to keep them in that game against the Ravens. And then this last week, Jeff, they came out and won a game that will remind everybody of the game they won in 2023 against the San Francisco 49ers, who came into Cleveland 5-0 that week and the Super Bowl favorites. And the Guardians played the Browns slopped up the game. They played an awesome defensive game. They made enough offensive plays and they won that game in the end. And that's what they did to the Green Bay Packers. So, Jeff, what do we know? What do we know about the Cleveland Browns at this point?
Well, we know for sure that they have an excellent defense. I mean, we've seen that now in 3 games. And like you said, even though the Ravens scored 41, they did not score that all on the defense. I mean, when you give a pick six, a fumble return for a touchdown, and another drive starts at the Cleveland 5, it's really hard to pin those touchdowns on the defense, right? But they, even in that game, they shut down Derrick Henry, and they really took care of Jordan Love in that Packers game. Not only did they sack him 5 times, the offensive line from the Packers false started 5 times, and of course those don't go down as sacks, but you could give credit to the Browns defensive line for making those guys jumpy. So that was a show, and I'll tell you what, I think the fans were kind of dozing until the last 5 minutes of that game.
The fans, I'm going to guess, probably wasn't the liveliest the press box has ever been. I can tell you at my house, it wasn't the liveliest it's ever been. But, it's at some point, something's got to click, though, on this offense, because this defense is, if we want to talk about the defense from 2 years ago as being kind of generationally good, this defense this year just feels like it's right up there with how talented that was. And so that's got to be the priority right now. And it's got to be what everybody's talking about, right, Jeff, is figuring out a way to keep the defense off the field a little bit, to get them a little rest, and make sure that the offense is complementing what they're doing out there.
Right. And now they lost DeJuan Jones starting. He was right tackle at the beginning of this game against the Packers. He's gone for the year with a knee injury. He'll have surgery. And you don't know about Jack Conklin. He missed 2 games now with an elbow injury after playing just one series against the Bengals before being poked in the eye. And when we talked to Kevin Stefanski on Monday, and he said day to day on Jack Conklin, which doesn't sound good. And talking to Mike Bloomgren, the offensive line coach, Friday, that did not sound promising either. And so you have Cornelius Lucas playing one tackle, KT Leviston playing the other tackle. And I'll tell you what, I watched that Monday night game between the Lions and Ravens. That pass rush, I don't know how the Browns are going to stop Aiden Hutchinson. That's going to be a challenge for whoever ends up playing tackle. They'll have to probably keep a tight end to chip against him. And as well as the defense has played, the way the Lions ran that ball on the Ravens makes me think that's going to be a challenge for the Browns defense.
Jeff, back to the Texans. That was a perfect transition, by the way, because in my notes here, the first thing I was bringing up was tackles. So you nailed that, Jeff. Thank you. When it comes to the tackles, I think a lot of questions are going to be this week as the week goes on and as the next couple weeks go on. It's an already sputtering offense. It's an offense that already is very much struggling to find its way. Jack Conklin's got this history of these injuries where you don't think he's going to be out for long, but then all of a sudden it's 3, 4, 5 weeks later and he's still out. And now you've got DeWand out there. So do you anticipate that there's any kind of, Andrew Berry's working the phones, looking for any kind of moves he can make to improve that position? Because we're still so early in the season that, it's certainly not something they want to give up on.
No, well, you're exactly right about that. But spoiler alert, there are no Joe Thomases out there looking for work. So, finding a tackle will be they're just not going to find a starting tackle. They might find a starting tackle, but he's not worthy of probably being a starting tackle. So this is really going to be a challenge for Andrew Berry.
I love that you brought Joe Thomas up. He's out there looking for work, although he's built more like a safety now than a tackle. So I don't know that he'd be able to do him any good at this point.
But you know what? The transition that Joe Thomas made from football to his present life is really a study for any football player now, because he has made that transition and he's happy and he's still, of course, involved with football, but he's moved on to his next life and he's looking great.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. All time great. So obviously the concern is there at tackle. Talk to me, Jeff, about anything that you've heard, because I think some question marks happened. The Browns running game looked about as good as it's looked in a while with Quinshon Judkins out there. You can see why they took this kid and why they were excited to take him in that second round of the draft this last year. But I do think an area that a lot of people had some questions was Dylan Sampson showed flashes at the beginning of the year when Judkins wasn't playing. And over the course of the first couple of weeks of being a pretty good ball player, especially a good third down style back. But in this game against the Packers, it was all Judkins running the ball. And then they would go right to Jerome Ford. So I think people had some questions on that because I think even on the depth chart it had Sampson over Ford, but they decided to go more Ford in this game. So, any thoughts on how they have the running back stacked, and if we should still anticipate seeing more Ford than Sampson?
Yeah, I think that Sampson will get his chances. Ford, they needed him some of those short yardage plays, and he has more experience picking up a blitz than Sampson does, of course, because Sampson is a rookie, and and Ford's been around a while. So I wouldn't read anything into like they're down on Dylan Sampson. There's nothing like that. And the Baltimore game was they just really couldn't get that running game going. If they could keep the score close in Detroit, I think you'll probably see more Dylan Sampson.
Elsewhere on the offense, Jeff, in the building, something they're probably not going to come out and clearly say, but it seems pretty clear right now on the offensive side of the ball that there's things that aren't just meshing right now with Joe Flacco. He's missing some throws that we were used to a couple years ago seeing him make, missing some guys open down the field. And right now there just seems to be a little bit of an issue of just seeing things the way that he probably wants to see it. So when you're in the locker room and you're listening to them talk, I think there's the fan side of things that wants to say, let's see some of the young guys. But when you're in the locker room and you're seeing them talk and you're listening to them and talking about getting better, what are you hearing out of Joe Flacco? Again, a guy that's known to be a consummate professional, about the way he's kind of started this season and what he's working on to try to improve and make the offense better for the Browns.
Well, first off, his protection has not been great. In that Ravens game, they're in his face all the time. And he's going to see that same thing here in Detroit. And last week, Jerry Jr. and I got into it a little bit because I said, hey, Jerry, watch it. And I try to actually be delicate, which I usually am not. But I said it looked like the Ravens were covering you guys really tightly. And did you watch the film? He says. He jumped on me. Did you watch the film? I said, no, I watched the game. Well, watch the film. I was politely trying to say, you guys aren't getting any separation. And I still think that's part of the issue. If the receiver can't separate from the guy covering him, then it's going to be really tough for any quarterback to make that tight throw. And that's one reason, nothing at all on Dylan Gabriel, but that's why you need a veteran quarterback in these situations, especially against really great defenses like the Browns faced in the second, third, and now again up here when they played Detroit.
It's funny that you brought up some of your questions because I was talking to Fred and I said, listen, you've known Jeff for a long, long time. So if I ask Jeff about the fact that he's always the guy that just doesn't seem to be afraid to ask the question that probably is going to irk the person he's asking the question to, is he going to get mad at me? And he goes, nah, go ahead and ask him. So yeah, you work with a lot of people that have covered the team for a long time and for just a year, 2 years. And you always seem to be the guy that is not afraid to step in there and throw out any kind of question. Is that just something that has come to you as the length of time that you've covered the team?
Yeah, I think that's it, Mike. And I try to ask questions that I think the fans want answers to, and I try to be their voice in the locker room. Like, kind of the same thing happened with Myles Garrett a few weeks ago. I was asking him about his speeding ticket, and rather than just say, "Hey, what do you regret driving so fast?" I said to him, what was it like to see that speedometer creeping up to 100 miles an hour? And when you're driving, right, you see that, I better slow down, right? But he just kept his foot on the, he didn't like that line of questioning. But see, I think as long as you don't ask antagonistically, and I don't think I do, then I just want to see what they say.
That's a great way to do it. Before we talk a little bit about this Detroit game, one more thing about the start to this season for the Cleveland Browns, and go back to the defense for a minute, because it really felt like, Jeff, they had a concerted effort through pretty much all of their strategies, is building the team this offseason, from the draft to the free agent signings they made and all that. Their strategy seemed to really be that they needed to address and beef up the middle of their defense. Obviously, they take Mason Graham in the first round. You take Carson Schlesinger in the second round, knowing that you're probably not getting JOK back. And they really spent a lot of time focused on the middle of that defense. And it really feels like that's something that is paying off for them to start, because not only are they good on the edges, which they always have been, from the pass rush to the corners and all that, but now they are elite against the run, and they're pretty much stout everywhere on that defense. So that philosophy of beefing up the middle is paying off for them.
Well, you're so right. And let's remember adding Malik Collins, who they signed in free agency, the defensive tackle. And you bring up Mason Graham. Let's quickly review that trade they made with Jacksonville. So yeah. Mason Graham, you'd be happy if that was your first pick, right? I mean, it was our first pick, but you'd be happy if that was your you're in that slot and you got him. But not only did they get him out of that trade, they got Quinshon Judkins in that trade, and the Jaguars' first-round pick next year. So, I mean, now, I hope Travis Hunter goes on and has a great career. But even if he does, the Browns really came out ahead on that trade.
No, absolutely. So let me talk about the Browns coming off their first win of the year, 1-2, off to play Detroit again. We've talked endlessly about the gauntlet that is the start of this season, the first 6 weeks. And so they beat Green Bay in just a hard-fought, shocking victory for the Browns. Now it's off to Detroit. We saw a Detroit team on Monday Night Football that kind of manhandled the Baltimore Ravens. They attacked them every which way offensively and defensively. They did enough against Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens. So it feels like when you start talking about the matchup, it's talking about the quarterback for the Detroit Lions, because he's kind of a tale of two quarterbacks. On one hand, if you let the offensive line for the Lions play well and keep Jared Goff clean, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league when he is not pressured. He is, I think, top 3 in EPA. He is awesome when he's not pressured. But when he is pressured, he becomes one of the lower tier quarterbacks in the league. So really the philosophy for the Cleveland Browns this week has to be about finding ways to just consistently get pressure on Jared Goff in the backfield, correct?
Oh, yeah, you're right on that one. And those numbers really do jump out at you when he isn't pressured, when Goff isn't pressured versus when he is pressured. And I'm telling you what, the way that Myles Garrett is playing now, I mean, he's been here doing this since 2017, and I think he's at the top of his game right now. And, I mean, teams, they know they have to stop him. It doesn't matter. I mean, and they can't. They know what they have to do, but knowing and doing are two different things when it comes to stopping Myles Garrett.
And Detroit's going to find a little bit of a different defense than what they found against Baltimore, which, by the way, there's few things I hate more than watching Baltimore play any other team but the Browns. Because when they play the Browns, it feels like they have 15 guys out on the field at any given time. And yet I'm watching them play Detroit, or, you watch them play other teams and they feel like they're just in a soft zone coverage. I watched them play just a soft zone coverage. They got no pressure on Jared Goff virtually all night last night. And he just found St. Brown and Jameson Williams is sitting in that zone coverage. Well, it's not going to be like that for Detroit this week. Again, they're going to try to bring the pressure, but they're also going to face that Browns man coverage. And the Browns are going to have their hands full with both St. Brown, Williams, Sam Laporta, and then trying to keep an eye on that two-headed monster out of the backfield in Jahmyr Gibbs and Montgomery. So, this just feels like a game where the Browns do have an elite defense, but they're going to be put to the test in every single way in this game.
You're right on that, Mike, too. And you know what? Nobody gave them a chance really against the Packers, right? So you never know. But I think this game is going to be tougher for the Browns. I mean, the Lions lost that opener, and they got pretty upset with themselves about that. And then they beat Washington, and they really pounded the Ravens. I mean, that they physically beat the Ravens, and that's a hard thing to do. So I think that's what's really notable about what happened in that game. So this is going to be a test for the Browns. They have to find a way, like you were saying earlier, they have to find a way to get that offense on track. How that happens, I don't know. Kevin Stefanski, people always get mad at his play calling when they don't work, right?
Right, of course.
And but so that play calling is not it. Do they have the talent, especially at wide receiver, to make this work? I'm not so sure about that. So that's going to be a struggle for the Browns. And I'm hoping for their sake that when the draft comes around next year, that they don't have to package 2 picks to get a quarterback. I'm hoping that they could use one on a quarterback if they probably will, but then you use the other one on a receiver if there's one that's in that draft range where they might be picking.
And so when you look at the way, because I think the Lions play pretty similar defense to the Cleveland Browns, they like to get after the quarterback. You talked about Aiden Hutchinson, which another big challenge for all Browns fans is going to be making sure they talk about Aiden Hutchinson versus Aiden Huntington, two very different players, but they're both awesome. But when you watch the way the Lions play, they play a lot of man coverage. They like to pressure the quarterback. They're a very aggressive defense. They are very much in the vein of their head coach as far as how they play defense. Jeff, what do you think the best way for the Browns is to attack that defense? Again, assuming that Flacco's seeing the field the right way and that they're getting a little bit of protection up front to allow him to step back and make some throws.
I think they're going to have to run the ball well on Sunday. I mean, that's no genius observation, right? But I mean, I really think that's their best chance. If the Lions get ahead by a couple of touchdowns in the second half, it's going to be really ugly. So Quinshon Judkins needs a big game, and Dylan Sampson, even one way to slow that pass rush is with screen passes, and I think Dylan Sampson would be a good target for those type plays. So, yeah, run the ball and cross your fingers.
Jeff, just 2 more very quick questions for you. One, just from a fan's perspective, because I do think this is things fans like to know. You're around the guys, you're around the locker room, you're around the coaches. After the team starts 0-2, after we haven't seen a win out of the Cleveland Browns in 9 months, basically, how does the atmosphere change in the locker room? How do the actions and the words change in the locker room? Does it feel like a cloud gets lifted now and there's a little bit more hope for the season?
It really did. That game, that locker room Sunday was so. That's a great way to describe it, like a weight off their shoulders to win the game, especially like they did, to fight back when it looked so bleak, to fight back and come back and win that game. It really was a joyous atmosphere. They weren't partying or doing anything like that, like a Guardians locker room. They're blaring music, which makes it hard to talk to the players. But they were really so much happier in that locker room. And now, they'll get back to business tomorrow. And they will, put that win behind them. But it's still easier to go to work when you come off a win than coming off a loss.
Well, Jeff, this has been awesome. You're out there at the Cavs facility. They did some media stuff today, talked a lot about Evan Mobley, and I cannot wait to watch him grow again this year. But you're heading down to take the Guardians, or to cover the Guardians as they essentially enter 2 playoff series, which is really the way they need to look at this week. So, Jeff, that's my last question for you. Somebody that covers all the Cleveland sports and has done it for a long time. Off the Browns for a minute. At the end of this week, are we going to be getting ready for playoff baseball for the Cleveland Guardians?
I think so. It'll be really heartbreaking if they don't to come back from those 2 losing streaks to put themselves in this position. It will be heartbreaking if they don't. But I'm telling you what, those guys, they love each other. I'm going to tell you one more quick story. So we're talking with Slade Ciccone. He pitched on the July 4th game against the Tigers. They lost that game 2-1, and that was their 8th straight loss.
Yes,
in that 10-game losing streak. And Slade Ciccone, I love that. That guy is he should be an inspirational speaker. But anyway, he said, we're going to look back at this losing streak in September and say that's what made us strong, and we're going to be a playoff team. And you just mark my words. And boom, he is prophetic.
It's the prophetic Slade Ciccone, and yeah, that's right. 6 games left. They got to win most of them if they want to make it, but hopefully the Cleveland Guardians do just that. I should have said this to you way earlier, Jeff, but as somebody that's covered for so long the Cleveland Browns with my co-host who isn't here, Fred Greetham, I should have asked you this before. This is what we'll end it on. What's your favorite Fred Greetham story? Because he's not here to defend himself. You got a favorite Fred Greetham story that he can't defend himself while he's here?
I think I'm going to go back to when this shows how long we've been doing this. So in the days when the Browns would play would train at Lakeland, we'd have a softball game with the coaches. And now Fred was in the Yankees organization. And man, that dude, we knew who to put at shortstop in those softball games because Fred had a rifle for a gun. He could rifle that ball up first. So yeah, Fred is a great guy. I mean, he's humble. I have enjoyed being around Fred now for almost 50 years.
All right, we got to say something nice about him as we wrap up. Jeff Schudel from the News Herald, from the Morning Journal. We really appreciate you jumping on with us here on Inside the Browns Beat. It's been a pleasure talking Browns and Guardians and so much more with you, and we look forward to your coverage throughout the rest of this Brown season, into the Guardians, hopefully playoffs, the Cavs, and so much more. Thanks for everything you do to bring this coverage to the people of Cleveland, and hopefully we'll catch up with you again down the line.
Hey, thanks for having me, Mike. It's been a pleasure.
Whoa, down in the corner over there. There we are. All right, big shout out to Jeff Schudel covering all the Cleveland sports, including what just happened, which is a George Valera 2-run homer for the Cleveland Guardians. They fell behind 1-0. They are now up 2-1. And again, a win tonight, man. A win tonight for the Cleveland Guardians is big things. I know we talk about the Browns on the Browns Beat here, but a win for the Guardians is big. And we're going to talk about it with our special guest, Steve Phillips. Yes, the same Steve Phillips that gave the famous Bobby Bonilla contract with the Mets, but a guy who does a great job covering, and he's been a friend of the show on Garage Beers. So at 9 o'clock, come back on the OBR streaming network. We're talking about the Guardians, the Browns, and so much more. And it's all happening on Garage Beers. That's going to do it for Inside the Browns Beat. Just want to give out our thank yous, big time thank yous to our guest tonight. Leah Doherty was awesome. So much fun talking about the Browns with her. And then Jeff Schudel, a ton of great insight. I loved when he talked about the fact that he tends to be the guy that maybe asks some questions that players don't like and why he does it. I thought it was a great answer. And that story about Fred, don't ever forget. Fred might have been covering these Cleveland teams for a long, long time, but a former baseball player. And Fred, I think Fred still has a bit of that rocket in his arm. So big shout out to both Leah and Jeff Schudel for joining us here on Inside the Browns Beat. It was a ton of fun talking with them, getting to know them. And we hope that you enjoyed that as well, especially without Fred here. I know nobody wants to listen to me rant on and on for an hour. So hopefully you enjoyed those conversations with them. I believe next week, we'll see. Again, next week, it's going to depend on London. So I don't know. I'm going to announce it because Fred likes to announce it, but I think we have Dan Lobby on next week unless he gets sent over to London, and then we might have to think about that differently. But that'll be a great episode. Fred will be back and so much more. We'll talk to you about how the Browns-Lions game comes out and about that upcoming game going into London against the Vikings. Again, that's going to do it for Inside the Browns Beat. Thanks everybody for jumping in here. There was a big crowd. The comments were great. Again, get some rest, get a drink, grab a beer, come back here at 9 o'clock for Garage Beers. But for Fred Greetham, who couldn't be here, I am Michael Keefe. This has been Inside the Browns Beat. Until next week, go Browns, everybody.